me do that shit.
Yeah, I was pretty when I was pretty young. Like you said, I was on 16, which was basically board company for little kids, and they put out a video. I think I mean, over the years, I've talked to so many people who are around my age that were like, oh, man, I watched that video so much because it was little kids too, and it was so relatable. So that happened, and then after that, I was in high school, and all my friends stopped skating, and there was like a little bit of a slower period where I was still trying to film stuff, but it's like I'm out in the suburbs, and I'm I'm not just like I have less people to skate with. I don't have a car yet. All that stuff slowed down for a bit. Then I started skating with like a bunch of people in the valley who were really getting it, like Paul Rodriguez, Van Wastel, Mike Taylor, all these dudes. There was like a little bit of a scene up there, and I would just jump in with them. Stopped going to school so much, sort of just like stayed out in the streets, and then we started filming some parts around then and getting in mags, and it was like that phase started of my career, and then I started getting noticed by, I feel like, a little bit more of a major, like the more like in skateboarding, which felt like such a small scene back then, but it was like then you're going to yeah right premiere, and you know everyone, and and I'm still just like a little kid. I'm still like technically in high school, but I'm like around all these people I respect, and then when I was on City Stars, that was pretty short lived, because it was like I said, all those guys that I was skating with in the valley, they all skated for City Stars, and they were like, just why don't you just get on? And I just saw Kareem recently, and we always talk about it, because people were kind of like tripping because I was a little bit more hesh, and everyone was like, it was City Stars, so it was like pretty fresh company, but he just was like, yeah, come on, like. So he was like, Spanky's the shit, like, let's do this. And then I was like, man, I respected all them so much. And then that sort of young team of like valley heads dispersed. Paul got on Girl, everyone kind of like left, and that's when I left City Stars. It was just like the natural thing, I was riding with them, they left, and Reem was like, no hard feelings. And then I was just a little bit of a free agent for a second. And I was hanging out with Ed Templeton a lot at the time. I was on America, and I was just like kind of hanging with all the people who were on America. And then going on trips all the time. I can't remember how I was on all these trips, probably America. And then there would be like random trans world trips, and you're just in Australia for a while. It was such a surreal time. I was just on the road all the time. And
How old were you?
I was probably like 17.
That was when you were on the road a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm guessing like 17, 18, maybe even a little younger, but going to all like the Europe contests and stuff, and America just really had us on the road. Me and Brian Herman were hanging a lot, and yeah, Baker put the offer out, and I ended up on some trip with them to Australia. And that was when I just got on the team. They were like, so what's the deal? I remember Dustin Dolan being like pressuring me pretty hard, like, what the fuck you doing? Like, I was such a big Baker fan from the moment it came out, which at this point, this is only like a couple years after it came out, but it was some pretty pivotal years. I went from just like at home in the valley watching the video right when it came out, and then a couple years later, I'm like on tour with these guys, and they're like, you want in? And I was like, hell yeah.
Did you already know them?
No, I just kind of met them all like as I got on America. I was really just like sprung right into the scene. They had the America mansion, and we were staying there a lot, and started filming for This Is Skateboarding. And at that time, it was like I was like basically living with Andrew Reynolds all of a sudden, and in this big mansion. Heath was there, and everyone was there. John Miner was making the video. He lived there, and but yeah, I just like started skating with Andrew and Herman a lot, and staying with them a lot, and yeah, it was so surreal. Like I can't even emphasize how weird it was to go in such a short time from being like a fan to like living with these people. It was crazy.
Yeah. So it kind of started with the trip to Australia.
Yeah.
It was a Baker trip. Who was on that trip, and how was that?
Shoot, I can't remember who was on it. I think it was like Andrew and Herman and Dustin. I just remember we were staying with Dustin a lot, and I don't know. I was on the road so much back then. So much was happening. They all kind of blend in a little bit. I'm sad to say, but yeah, it was just like, I think Mike Maldonado might have even been there. It was like early on. But yeah, I was just tripping. I don't know. It's like, it's hard to remember these things. It feels like a dream. Like, it doesn't feel like my life almost at this point, because there's so much stuff happened in those like first 4 years that it was just like one big whirlwind.
How was it looking back on all that footage? And thank God it was recorded and just heavily documented.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, I always talk about this, and I talk about it because like it's important, and just like an era that is pretty much impossible to recreate.
Mm-hmm.
The people involved, everyone's like a fucking American original. You know what I'm saying? Like every person. We were looking at a Baker ad, the one where there's like, it's like outside, and there's it's the whole team,
Mm-hmm.
and there's the white backdrop, but
Mm-hmm.
dudes are like out of the white backdrop.
Mm-hmm.
We're zooming in on every person, and we're like, dude, every one of these people is like super original, super like movie character, like story character. You know what I'm saying?
Indeed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was at a friend's house the other day, and a couple of friends that skate, but they're not like in the skate industry, and they put on Baker 3, and they were just like asking me about each rider, and I was like, as I was sort of just going into the stories from back then, I was thinking to myself the same thing, like, God damn, this like group of people are so fucking fascinating, like such characters. I can't believe that they were all assembled in one team, and that I was around to see some of that stuff, because it was so funny. I mean, watching like Greco in that time period, and I mean even like Bulala back then, and Dustin doing his shit, and like all these people, like such like true eccentrics. Like, it was crazy, man. It was like really fun and really crazy, and it was also at a time where, to me, it was like it was before, like that in the beginning, it was like before it was just skateboarding. We were just out there like skating every fucking waking hour, and so it was like very not. It wasn't like easy, but it was everything, So it was easy to just keep my head down and be like, try to keep up with whatever sort of situation I was in, rise to the occasion, and then so like footage was happening because I was just trying to show off for my heroes, and so like being in those videos, I think at the time I was a little bit able to recognize like this is like a big deal. You know what I mean? Like don't blow this right now. I can't say if I did or not, but I could say I was trying really hard not to, just looking around like, wow, I can't believe I'm here. And yeah, and like getting a peek behind the scenes and behind the curtain of all these like fucking fascinating characters. It was a fun time. That was like before for me, it was like before girls and partying and all that stuff. So it was just like a concentrated focus on that stuff.
So what's it like when you look back on those videos now?
It's interesting because after so long, it's almost like the videos become a little bit of your memory too, because like that's all the videos and the stuff, that's what you see from that time. I never was like very plugged in. I didn't take a lot of photos or have a computer anything back then. It's just like that's sort of like the record of my life from there. But it's fun. It's fun. I don't really go back a lot and look at that stuff, but it is pretty fun. I gotta admit to watch one of those old videos every once in a while and be like sprung back into that time.
Yeah. Plus you're 17, 16, 18, and you're making a living off of skating, and you get to travel the world all the time.
Yeah.
And that's a cultural education in and of itself.
Yeah, that was really the best part, I think, like just getting that education, being out there, getting introduced to people who were really just like designing their lives how they wanted to, and there just wasn't a lot of rules, but there was a lot of exposure to a lot of cool shit.
Yeah. How do you think that affected your mind? One, the travel, but two, the fact that you're like at some point making checks for skateboarding, but you're super young and there's no conception of like, you know, or maybe there is like, dude, this is fucking wild. I'm making some sort of money off of this and really living it. And let's hope I can keep doing this for as long as humanly possible.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, first of all, I was like coming from the suburbs that I just recognized, and when I was there, I just wanted nothing to do with it. It felt like suffocating how fucking vapid and just boring it was. I was just like bored to death in the suburbs. I wanted to get the fuck out, and I got out, and I was like, I want to see anywhere they'll send me, I'll go. I want to see it all. And yeah, like I said, I dropped out of high school, so it was like it felt like a big education to see all that. It was like I felt so lucky to be there and see all that. And as far as the money, I gotta say, like, it never felt like any of this was gonna last, so I wasn't really living it up in that way. And also I thought I wanted to be like punk or something. I didn't really like need a car or like fancy clothes or a watch or anything. I just thought it was cooler to be like punk, for lack of a better term.
Why didn't you think it was gonna last? I feel like that's the opposite. A lot of times people are like, this money's gonna last forever, and these, you know.
I probably just had good people in my ear telling me like, you know, this is not forever. Look around. People back then just didn't really like skate past 30. They didn't, and even then it was like most careers just didn't last very long. And I just saw that for what it was and was like, all right, let's just do this as much as we can, but not try to like, I'm not really trying to like write a bunch of checks that makes this feel like it's forever. I'm like, and that was kind of like for better and for worse, because on one part you're like living modestly, but in the other sense I could have probably like loose a little bit and with hindsight and like not been thinking about it, but I was like, damn, I'm all in on this shit. I don't have any skills. I don't have any education. Like, because before that, I was like, I'll have to figure out how to go to college and sort of hope to find out what I'm gonna be and what I'm gonna do. And luckily, I was able to pursue all of this, but it always felt like very temporary.
That's interesting. I feel like thinking that it's not gonna last forever, or the whole, you know. It's funny because, I mean, who knows what's going to happen tomorrow, but it worked, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. There's something about skateboarding. It's just like it's just such a young person's thing. It always just felt like, you know, the tides could change and the trends could change, and I never felt like I was like Costin or P. Rod. Like, my skills weren't the type of skills that made me think I was gonna just win contests forever and be in skateboarding. I was just like, damn, they're into me now. Like, let's see how long I can ride this out from the beginning. Luckily, it's like, fuck, somehow I'm still here in some way. So it worked out, but you know, like.
Yeah. All right. So you're riding for Baker, you're on America, you're going on tours, and you're doing the whole thing. And there's a lot of partying going down around you, and it's well documented in the videos and stuff,
Mm.
particularly the Baker videos. But how that whole thing happen with just slowly getting into partying heavy, and I guess when did it start, and what was that journey like?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I'll try not to make it too like after school special or therapy or something, but I think I was you know, young, tons of freedom. I there was in where I came from, I guess you could say there was like I had already from my home life, there was a lot of like addiction and stuff going on at home. So as I found skateboarding, I was really like this is my salvation from that stuff. This is my like I'm gonna throw everything I got into this. This keeps me from going crazy and it really worked. And I was like, I don't really need any of that stuff. Like I don't there's like people in my family got problems with that stuff. I don't want to mess with that. And then slowly it's like all around me. I'm getting a little older. I'm starting to like want to hang out with girls and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, I'll dabble here, and then I was like, boom, that's fun. And I was like, I was like, you get that little release, and you're like, wow, I'm not shy anymore. I'm not anxious anymore. I'm like, I want to do that forever. And then it just was like, I had a short period of time where I was a little bit like, I'm just like 1 foot into partying, and that didn't last very long. And I was like, that's my new identity. I'm just like going fucking, my foot's on the gas. And then I don't know. It's the kind of atmosphere where it's easy. There's no structure. It's all around you, and it was fucking fun.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like when you're young, you can still skate super hard, party every single night. Then it was like party every single day. And yeah, I don't know. Like it's hard to say that I wouldn't do the exact same thing if I were a kid again. Like it's just like it was just too much fun, too much at my fingertips, and it was and yeah, we're living it up.
Was Reynolds already sober at the time? Was everyone in the crew partying like that?
A lot of like the those guys in the next generation up had already been through this, and they had gone through it, and I was sort of buddied up with them when I was still not partying, and I was like seeing their recovery process, and I was like, yeah, like learning all these like things about what they were going through, and applying that to like my childhood and the things that I like experienced, and really thinking hard about those things, which was an interesting way to like fall into partying with a kind of knowledge about like all of my peers that I really respected the most were sort of either struggling with that, getting over that, or thriving in their new lives. Um, and so yeah, I had a sort of deep understanding of like addiction
Yeah.
before I even tapped in. And then it was like knowing all that, I dabbled, and I was like, man, I know all that, and this is so fun. I'm down. And then yeah, just slowly, like it wasn't like this dark descent into like drug addiction and like mayhem. It was just like a real slow, um, I don't know, just like a ride. It was yeah, one thing leads to another. You're out there, you're like, you start finding fun parties, you start going to New York. Man, when I started going to New York, everything changed. I was like, I really don't even know how much I care about skateboarding anymore. I want to be like in this place forever. There's so much fun things happening in like that sort of 2005 to 2010 era there that was like, I loved it. I felt like I was in the center of the world. It was so cool.
So how long did all that go on for?
Partied and lived it up until like I think that went on all the way until I want to say 2015 is when there was like, it was like up, 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 fun, fun, fun. Then, yeah, like classic things, started losing my sponsors. Things were like, didn't feel like they were really going downhill because I was still like having so much fun, and like, didn't have a lot of responsibilities, had played it pretty safe. And so I wasn't like broke or anything. I was just kind of like, wow, I can milk a little bit of this for a while. And then I was like, oh, that, like, I went through a bunch of injuries, and like come each time coming back a little bit slower, and yeah, feeling a little bit less viable as a pro skater. I was feeling crusty. I was feeling old, and I was like, maybe it's time to bail from skating, figure out what's next. And I was sort of like in that headspace. And then around 2015, luckily, some of my closest friends, actually Nick Face, Jerry Sue, and Tino Razzo, sat me down, and it wasn't like a proper intervention. We were just out drinking one night, and they were like, "We've all been talking about it. You're fucking blowing it. Like, look, you've just sort of given up on skateboarding and stuff, but you're not. It's not completely necessary that you have to just like tap out right now. Like, why don't you sober up and like give it a go?" And I'm so grateful that they had that, which at the time was kind of an awkward conversation. They're not like coming at it from like a sober perspective. They just like stuck their necks out for me, and they were like, "Look, you're like tapping out too early." And I was like, and it hit me hard right away. I was like, that night I was like, all right, I'm in. I'll give it a go. Like, it meant so much to me that my friends were like putting it out there like that. I was like, that's all I needed to hear. Like, I'll try whatever. And then put it off for a bit, and then eventually I was like, set a date, and I was like, all right, after Thanksgiving, I got a party on Thanksgiving, and I'm going to Hawaii, got a party in Hawaii, and like all this shit. And then I was like, all right, when I get back from Hawaii. And then, yeah, that was 11 years ago.
So at that point, when they were talking to you, you were already off Baker, and you were already off. Were you off America too?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. I guess, how was that? How was losing the sponsors? And, you know, these sponsors to you are like, they're your homies. It's like family. So it's more than just like, I'm not sponsored anymore. I don't know. How was that?
Yeah. I mean, it's a hit. It's a hit to your identity for sure. But I was just kind of like not being I wasn't really like, I don't know. I wasn't really just present for it. I was I kind of was just like, the second somebody was like, I don't know if this was, I was like, yeah, it's not, I was like, it's fine. Don't worry. Like, I'm not doing my part. Like, I'll figure something out. I was really like, not really, deep down it probably hurt, and I was disappointed in myself, and I was bummed that I was like losing my family basically, but whatever. There was something else in me that was like, don't think about that. So it's hard to say, I wasn't like sitting there wallowing and being like, what am I going to do next? So I was just kind of like, let's go get fucked up. I don't know. I just lost my sponsors. I got to figure it out. I'll figure it out. It's just like, you're just like wrapped up in the wave of things.
Yeah. Were you worried about making a living or the rest of your career or anything like that?
Yeah, I was a little bit worried. I was just like lost a little bit, but yeah, I didn't really know what I was going to do. I was like, basically, I'll try to skate on the side. Maybe I'll get a job on the side, and then sort of hope that my life turns out a certain way. I didn't really know what was happening. That was also a kind of short period of time, and it all felt very, I don't know, that was just another whirlwind, but a different kind, like a little bit of a strange downward spiral. Yeah. But nothing, but at the same time, it was very gradual, and it didn't feel like my world was caving in, really. It just was like, shit, things aren't going my way at the moment. I wonder what's going to happen. But I didn't have any responsibilities at that time. I didn't have any, like, I had really designed my life to have no responsibilities, and I just didn't have a lot of drive. I was just kind of floating.
Side note, was it your epically latered? What did you have? Do you have an epically latered?
Mm-hmm.
Was that the video where you're like, yeah, I don't really like using backpacks or like whatever, and then you're using like a plastic bag to carry Spitfire wheels, and that was that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. I saw that shit and I was like, I'm not using no backpacks anymore, dude.
Yeah.
I'm using plastic bags.
Yeah, like I kind of like carried whatever that ethos of like anything I got on me, if I lose it, that's fine. That's just I just like wasn't attached to anything. I was just kind of like floating, which I can't. I mean, I'm still a space cadet, and I like lose shit all the time. Even though my life is like much more structured, and my routines are pretty adult these days. But back then, I was a fucking mess. Like it's like I couldn't be attached to anything. It was just like easy come, easy go, and it was like a kind of fun way to live. So I carried that on until I absolutely had to learn how to have some responsibility.
Yeah. So the homies talk to you, and you decide that you're gonna stop drinking.
Mm-hmm.
So how was that process?
It was like, I mean, I was pretty exhausted. I was like ready to try something new, and a lot had happened. I fucking been in the hospital, set on fire, all this shit. Like, just like my health was deteriorating. Classic, just addict shit. Feeling pretty rough. So I was like, oh, I'll see how it is for a couple months. And it was like a little bit, it was a little bit hairy getting sober at first. So I felt pretty fucking fragile. I felt pretty just raw.
Did you do anything, or was it just like, I'm gonna stop?
At the time I just was like white knuckling it. Just I'm just gonna stop, see how it is for a month, and really I just like ended up throwing my all that addictive behavior into skateboarding, and just like learning how to skate again, and like feeling good again. And I was lucky once again that there was just like all these opportunities to like put all that energy. I had the time, I had the resources to kind of just like I was staying relatively comfortable, but I got to just be out there skating again. My friends took me back in, let me in the van. I'm like out on missions, and I'm just like starting to film video parts again. I just like threw it all back in without any real plan. And then I really like, I think what happened was I started feeling so much better so quickly, because I was like being physical, being outside, getting all of my fucking, putting all like my mental health shit into just being like out there. Skateboarding gives you so much. You get to be with your friends, have the community, be outside, get like have these little wins every day where you're like trying shit, and like there's so much like turmoil can be filtered through those things. And then that led me to feeling a little bit better, getting my my feet on the ground, and then from there I just like started working on myself, and really like addressing the stuff that I had just been carrying around since, like, I think a lot of people do that. You just like have stuff from when you're a teenager and you never really process it, and I just like dove into that. And yeah, I don't know, again, I was lucky to have access to, like, I went to therapy and blah blah blah, and that like really helped. That helped me a lot, because I just got to dig into some of the things that I had been trying to like just power through with other shit.
Yeah. Were you hesitant to do that?
Not really. It was something that I just didn't see much. I didn't really get the stigma behind all that shit. Like, I never was like trying to be tough. So like being like being vulnerable in that way was like, it wasn't a big leap for me. I just like already thought of myself as like a little fucking emo kid anyway. So I was like, oh, let me sort this shit out so I'm not like such a drag to be around, or I don't have to like, I don't know, just keep making the same mistakes over and over for my whole life. I just wanted something new, and so it was like I had some momentum to make some changes in my life after that, and then one thing led to another. It was really like just a real like snowball in the right direction after that.
Yeah. So you'd say the therapy made a difference.
Absolutely, yeah. For me, it was a big difference, and it wasn't like I didn't do anything crazy intensive. It seems like a big deal, like, oh, for a lot of people, I guess, like, oh shit, I'm going to therapy, this means I'm crazy or whatever. It's just like somebody to talk to, sort of sort through some shit that you're kind of like going in these mental loops for your whole life, and you're like, okay, maybe I could use a little bit of guidance, or get some of this stuff out, or just like try something new.
Mm-hmm. Did you get any advice or any help or anything like that from the the older generation of Baker that had already been through stuff like that?
Absolutely. I mean, that in itself, just having that base that I was talking about before I even started drinking, having all that like knowledge about what it is that we're doing when we're when we're like partying, escaping, all that stuff. Yeah, there was just so many things, big and small, that I was lucky to receive the information from the people around me, that I also just respected and had this built-in respect for these people, and there's like a bunch around me in skateboarding. There's so many people who have been through a lot of stuff, and it's helpful to have that kind of community, because you're like, I talk to a lot of people on Instagram and stuff that are reaching out to me who are going through it, and they're like, I'm living in a certain way, I don't want to live this way anymore, and then they don't really have people around them who have been through it. And I think that's a big part of it, is just to not feel like you're fucking like giving up on something, or you're broken or whatever. It's just like it's just, for a lot of people, it's just part of life. You're like, do something for a while, you overdo it, and you gotta course correct and try something else.
Mm-hmm.
Just so happens that like a lot of people, they are all in on shit, and I'm kind of like one of those people who's just can be pretty all in on stuff. So I had to go all in the other direction, and sort of put all that energy into feeling better instead of escaping how I'm feeling.
Was there any part of it that felt like perhaps you were losing a part of your identity?
I think that that's a huge part of it for a lot of people, and there was a part of that because I was so dug into my scene of partying and like being out there. But at the same time, like I ran that for so long that I was kind of like just off on my own tip a little bit by the end, and I wasn't like mega social anyways. And then, I mean, I just was lucky to fall back into my original identity, which is a skateboarder.
Mm.
And so that's such a powerful thing to be able to fall back on. It's like, oh, I'm just going to go out in the streets, and then I didn't really have to question any of that other shit, because that was always, even though it took precedence for so long, that was a secondary identity. My real identity was always as a skateboarder, and getting out in the streets was all that mattered to me.
Yeah. Is it hard today at all, or is it you completely past that?
Hard to be sober?
Yeah. Do you ever want to drink, or do you ever want to party, or do you ever want to? Yeah.
No, I'm thankful that the obsession with like getting fucked up kind of lifted pretty soon. Like I said, I kind of put all that energy into an obsession with like feeling better and like achieving different things. And like, even though that can feel pretty similar, but it's just like, I recognize I just have to like transfer this into things I have to transfer all this energy into things that make me feel better. And so in that sense, like the idea of getting fucked up equals, in my mind, not feeling better, and the obsession is gone.
Mm-hmm. This like that thing that's like, oh, like the stuff that I have, I'm not necessarily attached to, or if I have to lose something, it shouldn't matter that much. And that whole like kind of lifestyle and way of being or way of thinking, where do you think that comes from for you?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. just probably like everything, just a product of whatever I was sponging up throughout my whole life. Maybe there's a lot of that in my dad, who's kind of like, he's like a surfer. He's very like tapped into um, the present moment and in his own way, a little bit like, I don't know, he probably imparted some of that to me, but just like, that's something that I just felt. I just like, I don't know. I don't really know where that comes from. I just was like, I don't want all this shit. I just like, I just want, I don't want it to sound too deep,
Yeah.
but really I'm just like, I was just even at that time interested in the moment and how I'm feeling in that moment, and like stuff doesn't really give me a lot of feeling.
Yeah.
That like cars, I'm not gonna get a lot of gratification out of any of those things. It wasn't what I was like. It wasn't what I thought was cool.
Mm-hmm. So then you start skating again. Your body's feeling better. You're being more physical, and you make your way back to riding for Baker and skateboarding again. So what was that like? How did that happen? Were there talks like, oh, if things go better, then you're like, you always got a spot here? Or how did that happen?
Um, yeah, I think I was probably filming a lot. I started like working on a project for America at the time. They like everything was very gradual. They like gradually let me back into the van, and we're filming again. I'm getting shoes. I'm out with Jerry Sue, John Miner. We're filming a part. Meanwhile, like I think Andrew, he was probably, it's like when your buddies get sober. I still deal with this too. You gotta like, you want to be there as much as possible, but you can't just like scoop them up and be like, this is your new life, welcome buddy. Like you're like, okay, people come in and out. So he was probably like, let's see how this goes. But he did a really good job of being like, dude, if this is what you want, like there's a place for you back. Like you said, he was like, he really did that. He was like, there, it would be sick, like if you pulled this together and you're serious about that, like let me know. And then it just became this gradual thing where stuff started getting back together. And I remember Patrick O'Dell was actually doing an Epically later that was sort of chronicling that stuff, which at the time, looking back, I was so freshly sober. It was so weird to be telling that story that freshly back into things. I think he was also kind of like, let's see how this goes. But for whatever reason that came up, and then in the middle of filming that was when Andrew surprised me with my board. And I think that was just him being like really supportive and being and wanting to see me achieve that, and so he did that, and that meant a lot to me, because in my own sort of personal story, I was like, okay, now I like have to see this through. Now I have to like, this is now my identity is this new thing, which is a powerful thing, how you look at yourself, how you see your own story. And so, yeah.
While you're doing all this, there's kind of like a spotlight on it, you know? You get kicked off Baker, the whole world knows about it.
Mm-hmm.
You get put back, you're currently drinking, the whole world knows about it. Then you're going sober, the whole world knows about it. Then you get back on Baker, the whole world knows about it. Skate world. How is that?
Yeah, I mean, that could be a lot, but I think in my case, I was lucky that really fueled my, it gave me the occasion to rise to. I was like, this is the story being told. Like, it was almost like my narrative was being unfolded in front of me, and I just had to get on board. So I think that's maybe kind of a unique thing, but I remember being, even in the time, kind of like, this is surreal again, but this is pretty fortuitous. This is something this is helping me out right now, because I could notice in that time, like, I don't really have a choice now. This is going well, and I'm gonna stick with it. And yeah, that was. I mean, how could you not, right? Like, this stuff's happening. You just ride that wave.
Yeah. So people knowing actually helped.
I think so. Yeah. I think it helped me dig in, commit, and keep going.
Hmm. So then you're skating, you're back on board. How many years was it, or how much time was it before that like there's that period,
Hmm.
and then there's you start drawing, you start making art for it, and then you get to where you're at now, little by little.
Again, kind of a gradual thing, but that was probably like a few years of skating, and then and then now I'm doing this, and there's more. When also once you make some lifestyle changes, you take out partying every day. You just have like all this time, right? So you have time and energy to dedicate to other things. And I was like, if I don't choose wisely what to do with all this time and energy, I'm gonna do more fucked up shit. So I was like trying to apply that into positive things, and I had more time to draw and do things like that, and I think that just bled into that. I had more time, and I was slowly opening myself up to being more responsible and being able to take on responsibilities. So that just gradually led into getting those new responsibilities, I think.
Nice. So what's your day-to-day life like now?
Now I am like bouncing. I'm sort of like juggling a handful of things and going, and the main things are usually, first of all, dad life. I got a 4.5-year-old daughter, and I see her when I wake up at 6:45, getting ready for school, do all that stuff, take her to school, and then it's like, depending on where we're at in the season of Baker, it's either I'm going into the office and we're like cranking stuff like that out, but then like part of the week I'm out skating, working, filming for whatever project we're working on at the time. And yeah, I'm like working more closely now with the America behind the scenes stuff, like sort of consulting in a creative way, and just having like luckily just like lots and lots of projects coming in and out. So I just like make a really unorganized calendar and try to whack-a-mole all the stuff that's going on lately, and it's fun. It's fun to just kind of bounce off. Like,
So you're staying busy.
Super busiest I've ever been in my life.
Yeah.
But it's cool. I like it that way.
Okay, yeah, it's not overwhelming.
No, and there's plenty of time to like jam in other stuff that's like helps me stay sane throughout that. Me and Reynolds, we ride bikes all the time and do all that stuff, and yeah, just like do yoga and shit, and like, but yeah, it's like nowadays there's no, especially with having a kid, there's no time where I'm like, what am I gonna do today? It's like it's like every night I'm going to bed thinking about the things that I left on the table that I want to get done tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I like living that way. I feel like I don't know, my dad's mega old and he's still doing that, so it's like built into us. We're just like, we keep going.
Yeah. What's it like having a skate career that's been going on for this long? And obviously there's like the physical aspect of your body aging, and you want to keep skating, so changing the way you skate as well, but also doing shit to take care of your body, like cycling or yoga or whatever you can do to, which is so contrary to skateboarding from 15 years ago, 20 years ago, where it's like, I'm actively actually going to not work out because like that's contrary to the ethos of what this is.
Yes.
So how is that?
I mean, oftentimes I look around and I'm like doing all that stuff because I am pretty drawn to all that stuff. The further I go along, the more I'm like, this like fitness wellness bullshit is like, it's like right up my alley. Like it just like what I was talking about being kind of like addicted to feeling better. Like all that stuff falls right into that. And yeah, like oftentimes I'm just like looking around like, dude, this is so corny. Like I wish this shit wasn't so corny, but ultimately my dedication, while I can do it, like I just want to be out in the street skating. So that's like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to be able to do that as long as I can. And that corny shit is kind of what it takes at this point, sadly.
Yeah.
But also I just like that stuff. It makes me feel pretty good, and yeah, it's just where I'm at right now.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of how long have you been a pro skater for? I know it's 20 plus years, but
Yeah, I think like let's see, 21 years.
okay, 21 years. What do you say is the reason the reason that it's there's so many pros that fizzle out, and people who are super ill for their time period, and then all of a sudden time goes by and you're like, oh, that dude, like what happened to that dude? What is he possibly doing now? But you're not really one of them. So what do you attribute that to?
I don't know. I mean, one, I'm like, it takes like a bunch of different things. Like we mentioned before, a lot of right place at the right time, a lot in like different periods of my career. But I will say I'm also just like extremely hungry. I like love to see a project through. I love to like work, and like skateboarding is the only real thing I like. It's the thing I'm gonna be most passionate to like put all my energy into. That helps. I think it also helps that I'm like, I've never been the gnarliest or best, or it's never like, I don't think it ever like really came that easy to me, so I'm used to working for it. And so never has it felt like a waste of time to like sit there for 5 hours and try a trick, because that's what I've known for so long, and that's kind of what I love. But I think most of all on that tip, it's just really like feeling like when I'm out there, it's a gift. I hate, this feels like corny to say, and this whole thing sounds like we've been being so serious this whole time. And I'm sorry for that, but yeah, I think that's what, for me, like it's like I fucking love skateboarding, so yeah. I'm out there, and I like feel lucky to be doing it, and so I'm doing it like more than I should usually. I'm like out there, like I'll be out there, and as long as there's somebody to like, as long as there's a reason to be doing it, I'll be doing it.
You don't have any long-term injuries, like?
I do. My shit's fucked. Like,
okay.
yeah. My knees are bad, and as a result, my hips are bad. And it's just like any other skater who's 40, you feel like shit all the time. And like some days I feel like I'm 20, and some days I feel like I'm 60, and you just like try to do all the stuff that makes you feel younger.
Do you think it's from the impact skating earlier on, before there was like banks and wall rides, and before you were doing that type of stuff?
Yeah, I think I was like, yeah, man, I was raised on zero videos and shit. Like since I was like 4 feet tall, I was jumping off of storage containers and shit. Like, and then, but also it's just street skating's hard on your body, as we all feel it. Like, it's just wear and tear. And then really, like, dude, I've done a lot just even in the last like 10 years of being back at it, where you'd look at my body of work or whatever, and it's like more low key and maybe like a little bit more creative or something, but within that there's just like plenty of jumping that just does some damage. But I think for the most part, I kind of peaked early as far as like going super big, so I've been able to ride it out for longer because I've found a little bit more low impact stuff in the last handful of years.
Yeah. What was it like filming for Stay Gold?
Stay Gold was not very fun, actually, because I was like dug in my deepest into partying and stuff, but it was also like really my time that I should have like stood up and rose to that would have been like the time to like film my best video part as far as like how old I was, but I just like wasn't in it mentally. So it was really like the most I've ever had to be like dragged into like getting out there. It was like everyone around me was so serious, like really, like Andrew was filming the best stuff of his life, going the gnarliest, like a lot of these people, like Herman was doing all that like table stuff, and I just was like, man, I just want to be in New York, and I just want to like hang out with my girlfriend or like do this stuff. Like, this skateboarding feels like a job right now.
Yeah.
which, you know, I wish I would have. On one hand, it would have been a nice time to be able to like capitalize on being younger and do all that stuff, but at the same time, what can you do? It's like your trajectory. That couldn't have been any other way, I guess.
Yeah, that's funny you say that, because I feel like your part in Stay Gold was the shit. And I feel like that's one of the parts where me and all my friends would just rewatch it. I think your first trick's what? Switch from big spin, right? Into that thing? There was like a crazy
Mm-hmm.
brick bank sport. What was that?
Yeah. I think that one was like into a ditch maybe or something like that. I think that was in New Mexico.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, that's also an example of you're going to look back at that with all the context of where you were at and where I was at. I'm looking at that with like all that baggage, but I appreciated they said you guys liked that. I mean, it was still a blast. It was like all that stuff was really, I don't know. That was a fun time to be in the van too and watching all that shit go down. I saw so much gnarly skateboarding at that time. Mm. And so it's also another thing when you're around all that, like you are just like naturally like, even if I was just at that time just trying to get tricks that counted as getting tricks and could go in that video, then I was like still in a place to do some of my best skateboarding that I could have physically at that time. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Yeah. You know what I mean? Just because I'm around all that shit that was so gnarly, I was like, okay, I have to like at least be trying to jump. Like there were so many times back then that I was like at least like trying to jump down a 17, even if I had just like come off of like a bender for 2 weeks in Japan or something like that.
Yeah. Did you take any part in editing your part for America? Did you choose the song? Was there any of that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, especially like for that video at that time, it was, I mean, I'd been in the game for a bit. So like music was a big part of things, but it's always a collaboration, you know, especially with somebody like John Miner, who's making videos. He has such a authorial vision. He knows what's going on, so you're really bouncing ideas back and forth.
How different is it, or was it filming for Baker back then, filming for America?
I mean, Baker in general has always been a kind of like there's Andrew's not like he's not putting pressure on people a lot. Like America videos were a little bit more like that was the shoe sponsor, they're paying the bills, blah blah blah. They're like, this is, you know, how the video is kind of gonna look, and it was a little bit more structured and rigid, and a little bit more of like Miner being like, yo, you got to figure your shit out. You got to do this. You need this for your part. You need that. And that's why it felt like more of a job at that time. But that was, I mean, looking back, that's how he had to be. That's how you got to be to like make a video project work with like 10, 12 people in it. But yeah, it was a lot different. It was a lot more. I remember when we would go from like filming a America video to go filming a Baker video after that, it was always just like so laid back, and filming with Beagle is like, he's like, oh yeah, dog, sick, that's fucking tight, oh yeah, even if you're just doing some bullshit, he's like so positive about it. So it was like a big change.
How long did you film for Stay Gold?
That's another thing. I mean, I can't remember exactly, but those video projects back then, it would be years, you know, it'd be like 3 years in the making or something like that at least. And so I don't know. I think I wanted more at that point of like put 3 years into 3 minutes, and you want it to be like the gnarliest shit.